Hello, everyone. This is Chris with the Bin Chickens Vinyl Fair 2 Electric Boogaloo podcast, season 2. Joining me tonight for the podcast is Brittany from Brittany's Record Shop in Cleveland, Ohio. Brittany, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for doing the show. So Brittany's Record Shop, how did you get this idea to get into opening your own record shop?
Well, I'd always been into vinyl. I come from a long family of music collectors. So, all the way back to my grandma, she was always the music kind of archivist for the family. My mom always had a large collection, and I did. And then, so when I was a teen, I started getting into a lot of sample-based music. So then I started sampling anything I could get my hands on. I started DJing professionally when I came back to Cleveland after I graduated college. So even though a good chunk of that was, digital and mostly Serato based, whenever I could, start laying down some vinyl sets, I definitely took advantage of it. And so I want to say about three, 3 or so years ago, I had the opportunity to by a record store from one of my friends who, or at the time, one of my friends who was going through some financial trouble. And my business partner and I had saved him from, losing everything. So we had bought that shop from him. And it was on the west side of Cleveland. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Cleveland area. But about a year after I had that location there, I closed up the West Side location and wanted to open up something that's a little bit more felt more organic on the East Side in my neighborhood. And I went from having a shop that specialized in just about every type of genre to something that was a lot more distilled and stripped down, that focused mostly on Black music. So the new shop focuses on hip hop, reggae, soul, and jazz.
Cool, cool. That is very cool. I uh
Hmm.
I did go onto your website, I think it was last week.
Hmm.
And first of all, I love your record. I love your website. It's brittany'srecordshop.com. Um
Hmm.
that's Brittany with two T's. And your website is great. You've got a really good selection of stuff. I I had to I had to restrain myself from clicking on too many things to add to the cart because the dollars can add up pretty quick when your
Yes,
record shop.
yes.
But I did order the I didn't know that Major Lazer had like basically like a greatest hits
Yeah, the
compilation.
essentials comp. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was stoked. I looked, I was like, okay, I haven't even heard of this. Let me see what's on here. And as soon as I saw they've got that remix of, I think it's All My Love.
Mhm.
As soon as I saw that on there, I added it to cart because I got that album, the Pieces the Mission album, about a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
And because I had just heard the CD and I loved the whole CD. It's only 9 tracks, but I'd loved it all. But that song, especially, I was like, I was really feeling that song. And then when I got the vinyl, I didn't even think to look on Discogs because I just ordered it. And then when I got the vinyl, it was just the first 8 tracks, and it didn't have that song with All My Love remix with Ariana Grande. It was just
Mhm.
it was just left off the vinyl, and I was like, "What the fuck?" That was really, that was really one of the reasons why I wanted to get it. So then when I clicked on your Major Lazer Essentials, I saw that. I was like, "Okay, here it is. This is they finally righted the wrong. I'm gonna have it now on vinyl, so I'm stoked for that to arrive. So thank you for stocking that."
Yeah, no, thank you for getting it. When I saw the address and the name, I was wondering, I was like, is this the same Chris from Ben Chicken? So, I mean, keep an eye out. It should be at your door any day now. So,
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the quick service, the quick response time with the shipment, and because I'm real anxious as soon as I place an order for a new record. It's like every day coming home from work, it's like, is it waiting outside my mailbox yet? So I'm
yeah.
stoked. Um, okay, so I was looking on your website a little bit before the podcast. I was reading the about section, so I was not aware because I thought you're okay. She owns a record store. She's got a great record store. Even though I haven't been there, I actually would like to go there.
Mhm.
I haven't been to Cleveland before, but actually, okay. Quick side note: Julie and I were at a headphones, like a headphone fair, like 2 Saturdays ago, and before it kind of opened up to the public. this vendor who was there selling headphones kind of came over to our table because we had a couple crates of records out. And so she started digging through them. And, I was just making small talk with her. I asked her, are you from Chicago or, where are you from? And she said from Cleveland. And so I was like, actually, have you heard of Brittany's record shop? And she's like, no, but if it's in Cleveland, I want to know about it. So hopefully I directed her, I gave her your website, I gave her all the info. So hopefully she, stops in at some point because your store looks really cool.
Oh, thank you. We're still getting the word out. It's been over a year in the new location, but the neighborhood's still as they call in the developmental phase. So, we really get the blast out there to really get people coming because I'm in an area located I'm in an area that's called Slavic Village. And it's a pretty kind of like economically depressed area, but it's making a lot of gains and turning around fast. So it's almost considered in Cleveland. If Cleveland were a whole map, it would be like kind of flyover country with little pockets of things to do here and there. So we're really trying to, a lot of the small business owners in the neighborhood, we're really trying to turn things around and change the narrative for the neighborhood.
Very cool. Very cool.
Hmm.
Uh, but when I was reading your about section, so you're also a producer? Why don't you
Yeah.
talk about that? Yeah.
Well, I go my DJ and producer handle is DJ Red Eye. So, like I mentioned earlier, I've been DJing around in the Cleveland area professionally for about 10 years, but I also make beats. So, we definitely take the beat culture seriously here in Cleveland. Usually, I want to say, if not twice a month, once a month, I definitely host an event at the shop called Beat Freak, which is a gathering for beat makers, and I showcase different beat makers from the city doing all instrumental sets. It's great for networking, people hanging out. Um, Personally, I'm in a band called Fresh Produce with me and my business partner that I had the first iteration of the shop with. She does most of the vocals. I produce like 90% of the tracks. I pitch in here and there on some rhymes. But yeah, like I said, I've always been sampling vinyl, spinning it, being surrounded by music. So, it's just something that I've always kind of stayed with. And as, I just trying to work on my craft, work shoulder to shoulder with other people, broaden my horizons. But yeah, I definitely get down on the pads, as people say, you know.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, do you remember the very first vinyl record that you ever purchased?
Ooh, I don't even know about purchase because I mean it was at a certain point where I was just getting into a lot of my family's records. When my grandmother had passed, I was starting to get pockets of records from her collection. Just things that I had to guardian and take immaculate care of. But I want to say, so it was weird to me like buying vinyl at a certain point kind of it was just kind of weird. Because then I was just starting to early in the game, people were giving away records left and right because they didn't want to go through selling them or they just thought they didn't
Yeah.
need them. So I want to say the first real records that I was starting to actually pay for were like dollar bin records. There's a spot in Cleveland called Loop, which is a coffee shop that is also a record store. So I used to go there for coffee all the time, and I'd see a record here or there that I thought was pretty cool. Like they had all of this 80s like R&B that I feel like they didn't know about. And this was before like Bruno Mars and the kind of like the hipster revival of like New Jack and a lot of the 80s funk. So I remember I think I spent about $9 or $10 and I bought Cameo's whole catalog out of the dollar bin. And it was all excellent condition. And I was just thinking like, man, these guys like don't know what they have. So when I started buying vinyl, it became like I was really strictly going to dollar bins just on some kind of snooty. I wonder what they're giving away,
Sure.
jewels they're just throwing out in the back bin and didn't know about. So for about a year or two when I really started actually paying for vinyl, I was really just digging around in the dollar bins. Cause I mean, I also knew that coming out of the Napster and LimeWire era that I went through in college, it's buying music, as a broke college and post college. aged adult, it still didn't really sit right with me. And as you said, the numbers add up really quickly. So yeah, so I wasn't really spending more than a buck, but I was always looking for like that gem so I could say that I got a steal. And then eventually I just started, going to different record fairs, buying things here and there. And even to this day, as a record store owner, I still try and put myself on a budget because, if you're not careful, you'll be having conversations with your landlord trying to say, well, I don't really have rent this, I can get it to you next week, but you just spent $600 on wax because you
Right.
just you just had to. So I mean, it's I tried to hold back as much as I could, but like, once you just start buying good wax and you start DJing with it and you got to have this record and that record, it doesn't compare. And then I was even getting caught up in the blog spot era where they had all of these great digital archives that people had ripped, vinyl of great obscure rare groove funk and international records. And then I kind of got the bug that once I started getting those zip files that I was DJing with, I was starting to like hunt all over for the actual record. And then that's when I just stopped being cheap. And like, I want to say sometimes I feel like 90% of my personal budget goes to buying wax for myself, not even the shop.
Right, right, right. I can definitely relate. The Actually, a little bit before I called you up here for the podcast as well, I went online because I've got a pretty big record collection now, like personally. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've got about 3,500 records, and I've got a lot of the stuff that I've been looking for over the years because I've been collecting now for about 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a lot of stuff that I've wanted to have for a while. So now it's just like singles and kind of like rarer stuff here and there that I can really I've never seen it out in the wild. I've never seen it out, when I've been digging through stuff. So I've really just had to go online to Discogs, because they're just some vinyls I need to have in my possession.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I realized the very first record that I bought, it was in 1999, and I just moved to Colorado, and I was interested in getting into DJing, into electronic music DJing specifically. And a lot of electronic DJs like in Europe and across the world were still doing vinyl. This was like before the digital stuff had really started to take hold.
Mm-hmm.
So vinyl was still pretty big for DJing. So the first record I picked up was a drum and bass remix of the song I Got Five on It by the Loonies.
Ooh.
Yeah, so and like, and I had loved that song, it was, a couple, maybe 5 years old at that point, like, that obviously the original hip hop version. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
always loved that song as a kid, and I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm sure I'll like, it was like two different drum and bass remixes of it. I'm like, I'm sure I'll like one of these, and sure enough, I like both of them. But when I was looking on Discogs a little bit ago, I realized I don't think I actually have the original hip hop version of I Got Five on It on wax. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I just went on Discogs just to see, like, just to do a little price check and see like how much this is going to cost me. And the only copies of the single that I were finding, it kept saying like it was the clean version. And like as soon as I see clean version, I'm like, it just something in me is just like I don't want the clean version. I don't want edited version. I want the original, explicit, however the artist meant for it to be heard or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I want to hear that. So I started clicking through all the singles because it was released, in the US, but then it was released in the UK and different parts around the world. And you got to just click on different versions of the vinyl single to see what is actually contained on the vinyl. And each version, it was just like it said the same thing. It was like clean version, edited version, whatever. So I went on Spotify and I brought up the song on Spotify, and the song length was matching what I was looking at on Discogs. And so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna listen to this because the only version I've ever heard is apparently the clean version. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, okay, so I can buy this, but I wanted to hear like what is there an explicit version out there? Because that's what it implies to me. If something's clean, there's got to be a dirty version somewhere. So I found the album that it was on. I think it was called Operation Stackola from '95, and so it's got I Got Five on. It's like the third track, and then like at the end of the album, it's got I Got Five on It reprise, and it was like a minute longer. So I found that on Spotify and listened to that, and that's like the unedited, dirty version, and it's got like a whole different verse. Like the whole song starts off completely different. Um,
Yeah.
which I had just I learned something today. I had never heard that version. Um, so that was cool. But I was glad to know that I could buy the clean version on vinyl as a single because the only versions of the album that I could see with that unedited reprise were like $100 and up.
Yeah,
And I mean
easy
it's
decision.
yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna stick with the single for now. But is there are there any like holy grail records that you have that you want to find for your personal collection that like you'll be jazzed if you see it?
Yeah, and I got caught up in an eBay war, and there's always that last person. Sometimes when you're on eBay, they wait maybe until about the last 10 seconds to bid. And so there's this one song by this reggae artist called Sonia Spence, and she kind of had this like reggae disco song called Let Love Flow. And it's just amazing. It's like, it's kind of light and fluffy, but the pocket is still pretty solid. It's got a reggae groove with kind of like a disco bounce, if that kind of makes sense. Not so
Okay.
much in the third world kind of way, but almost it just has like a laid back groove at about 108 BPM. And I'm like, man, this would be such a great thing to DJ with. I already have like a kind of lower quality rip of it on digital, but I'm like, man, if I could break this out. So I saw a copy of it on eBay that I wanted, and the cover, the jacket was just trashed, and I didn't even care about that. The song was just so good, even though it even said it had light scuffs and all this other stuff. I was like, okay. So I was in the hunt for it, and it was gone, and so I don't really see too many reposts for it. So I always try and keep an eye out for that one, Let Love Flow by Sonia Spence. And also, I know a lot of DJs talk about it from here to Europe, but like I just have like dreams that maybe I'll come up on somebody's collection and they'll have a copy of that for flowers for real. And I won't have to pay $3,000 for it. Like I was watching this. I forgot what the YouTube channel was, but the DJ from Motor City, what was it, Motor City Drum Ensemble, he was doing this little digging demonstration, and he came up on like this random obscure test press of flowers, and he was just like, "You don't even understand how much this record." He's like, "I'll take it," and like it was just there. And the cheapest you can find that for is I want to say like 2,600, something like that, and then it goes up from there. It's just a great song, but I mean, I really like things that are just pretty deep, groovy, funk, funkiness is a must, so I mean, I DJ so much on like Serato, and I'm not one of those, vinyl grouches, get off my lawn kind of people like, oh, if you're not using vinyl, you're not a real DJ. But it's just something about like there's some things I just have to have on vinyl. Because at first it was just things to sample, then it became things to listen to. And now I'm always aggressively digging for things that I can play in a set. So, that's kind of been my compass for digging the last few years, because because you can sample anything. So, a lot of my early records were just random easy listening to, standard like funk things you can get 5 for a quarter and all this other stuff. Cause you can just sample anything. It doesn't really have to be a big name album. Then it became things to listen to, but now it's just things that I just want to throw into a set, and I just I just I just love having like the perfect mix. I mean, whether it's something like the new Gold Link record that came out that I'm absolutely in love with like a bunch of and work that in with some Stacks 45s, some Green Sleeves reggae, and some Clock Tower dub, and just all types of just things. As long as it's funky, like I don't necessarily see genre, but it's just got to have a nice pocket, deep groove, and like that's basically it. But it's just like if I could get those two records, that Sonia Spence and the Flowers for Real, I have a number in my head that like that's the most that I'll pay for those. I feel like I'll never say it out loud because then I'll actually have to, somebody's gonna come and say, I'll sell it to you for that price, and I'll just feel like an idiot, but I love those songs, and sometimes it just kills me that like I can only play them on Serato. But yeah, you know.
Yeah, I've made it kind of I don't set a lot of goals for myself in my personal life. And that kind of explains why I haven't maybe progressed to great things so far. But one of the goals that I do have is I want to own every song that I've ever really, really enjoyed on vinyl. I want to get a copy of it on vinyl because, as I'm sure you would agree with, listening to something on vinyl is just there's a warmth to it. There's a depth to it and a richness to the sound that you just don't get with any other medium.
I agree. I agree. I mean, but what? I will throw in tapes. I'm a big tape person
Oh, okay.
because I love the way when tapes break down, you get the warmth and the hiss. I mean, sometimes you get that a little bit when you break in and get vinyl, but I mean, whether it's tape or wax, it's just such a warmth to it, and it's like a perfect imperfection. And if you have like the right sound system, the musicians are right in the room with you. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like you just can't beat it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can't tell you how many times like I've gotten a lot of, I'd say, younger age millennials and the up and coming Gen Z people, and they buy something for their mom or dad because it was their favorite song. They thought it was cute at the shop, so they got it for them, and they're like, you know what? That sounds totally different on wax, but like, in a good way. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I totally know what you're saying. Like, I forgot who I just sold a copy of Kiss on 7 inch, the Prince single to someone, and they were just like, it was so much boomier and it just sounded more real. And it's just like, you got to understand the version that you're hearing has probably been remastered like a million times since the
Yeah.
actual shit was released.
Yeah.
So, I mean, which, it still sounds great today, but then it was just like, how did it really sound when Prince cut it, you know what I'm saying, in the 80s? What
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
the real feel and the vibe of it? And it's really cool to see young people who weren't there kind of get taken back, and then they kind of realize sometimes I don't want to say the con, but the con of the digital, the CD and the remastering era. You know what I'm saying? Stuff was already mastered. You could probably have a more so-called perfect technological practice 20 years later for the times, but things sound the way they sound when they're released, and there's a kind of charm to that. So, yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. I think cassettes are just maybe, vinyl has been having a resurgence here for a minute. And I think this year it's poised to outsell CDs for the first time since 1986. There's going to be more vinyl sold this year than
I
there are.
thought yeah, yeah, I read that somewhere. Was it you who had posted that? Because I saw that on Instagram and I went and followed up on the
Yeah, I think we did.
article. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
so
very
that
easy to believe. Yeah.
oh, sure, sure. And so I think cassettes aren't there yet, but I think cassettes just in the very last couple of years, because I'm starting to see when I go into record shops, I'm starting to see the cassette section kind of expanding and growing larger, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
And
in some niches, cassettes have never gone anywhere. Like, I feel like kind of the beat culture, and when I say beat sometimes, like the beat culture that's can stand alone independent from lyricists, that is kind of like the hip hop kind of beat scene. See, how do I put it, the beat scene has gotten kind of couture, and tapes, which are always the medium for producers in the 80s and 90s to kind of get their sound out, be kind of came a symbol. And also in Cleveland here, which still has a huge punk scene, before a lot of the punk bands got their money up to drop 45s, they were still pushing tapes. So, there's a lot of great, punk releases that are on cassette as well. You got a lot of experimental beat makers who drop a lot of tapes, like on my label Fresh by Nature Records. I think we have about 4 cassette releases, and the first two have sold out a couple times already before. When I go to the UK, I meet a lot of people who are still circulating, trading, selling tapes. Germany has a booming hip hop cassette culture. We sell a lot of tapes. To I see Dresden, Dusseldorf like all the time on the orders, and I mean it's cool. I mean, for those who enjoy the cassette space, it's definitely a dope thing. Plus, a lot of people, who don't have newer cars still have a tape deck. So when they come to the shop and they'll start digging for records, they'll swing by and see that like I'll have like newer cassettes, old cassettes. Sometimes people have sold like really cool like mixtapes of different artists that came from like 1985. And it's just an
Sure.
awesome tape. When my turntable broke for the shop for about a month, I was just playing tapes. It was
Yeah.
cool. So I mean, I just love physical hard copies. It's something to be said about like we're in an era where you can dig digitally, and that's cool. But after a while you can just Shazam what somebody's playing and find where they got it and download it. There's not as much mystique anymore, but there's some things that you just can't cheat when everything's physical, when everything has moving pieces and parts. You either have it or you don't, you know?
I totally feel you on that. I picked up a cassette last year of the first CD that I ever remember buying when I was like 12 years old. I bought the Crisscross album, Totally Crossed Out.
That's an awesome album.
It is an awesome album. So
Mhm.
I saw the cassette in a record store like a year ago, and I was like, you know what, I gotta have this on because I just bought it earlier in 2018. I got the vinyl. I got it on vinyl. Um,
Mhm.
I collected there was four singles off that album, which I didn't even realize that, I knew Jump and Warm It Up, obviously, but I didn't know that I Missed the Bus had been released as a single.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and It's a Shame had also been released officially as a single. So I picked up all those on vinyl, and I was like, what else am I going to get to kind of just like honor my 12-year-old self? Oh, cool, here's a cassette tape. Boom. Now I've got all the versions of it. So
So were you more partial to the Mac Daddy or the Daddy Mac?
I feel bad because I don't remember which one was which. Um, I do feel bad that, I mean, one of them obviously has passed on at this point. So that's a shame. But I mean, I don't think I really had a favorite. I just, as a 12-year-old kid, just hearing Jump was the first song that I heard from them. And, you know, it was 92 and there was a local Chicago radio station, B96, um, whose main focus was hip hop and dance music. And every night at 9 o'clock, they had a Coca-Cola Flame Throwing Five, and it was the top five songs for the city. And I heard Jump on that Flame Throwing Five. It was the number one track for like I don't know how many weeks. It probably wasn't as long as my nostalgia remembers, but it felt like it was just number one for like a whole month, you know. Um, but yeah, I'm partial to that.
Yeah, no, I have fond memories of Crisscross. I mean, Jump was definitely a classic, and then on top of it, I was really, into Supercat at the time. I don't know if you remember the dance hall artist Supercat, and
Was is he
did a.
is he the
Hmm?
one that was in that Paula Abdul song, The Opposites Attract?
I'm not sure, but his first, like his big breakout single, because he was really big. I'm half Jamaican too, so like like reggae goes runs deep. But his big crossover song was "Dolly My Baby" that he did with Biggie, Diddy. I forgot the other dude who had a verse on there, but he did a song with Chris Cross. I believe it was "Da Bomb," and like he
Oh
had a
yeah.
couple different versions. So what?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that was on their second album.
And yeah, and it was just like, oh man, I know these guys are legit because they're like doing stuff with Supercat. And like I just remember like Crisscross to me was they were cool, but it was something that made me still realize when I was like, yeah, but they're like a kid group, like they're a kid like me. But when I saw like they were working with Supercat, and I was like, all right, these dudes are thorough. And it's funny because you still
Yeah.
then you get older, you realize the story about how they were kind of like produced and put together like by Jermaine
Sure.
Dupri, but I mean it's still cool, you know what I'm saying? Like Crisscross, man, like it's a lot of memories there. And a lot of good production. Like hats off to Jermaine Dupri. Like,
Yeah.
like he's definitely like coming out of ATL, all the stuff that he did down there, like production wise was very legit.
Have you seen that Netflix docu series, Hip Hop Evolution?
Yeah. Hmm.
Have you seen all of it? Like, there's like, because the third season just
It's
got
like
released maybe.
3 seasons. Well, the one thing that I enjoyed it, but if you watch the whole thing, it production wise, it seems like they did a lot of like long interviews, and they just kept by the third season, it seemed like a lot of recycling. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Of
yeah.
different parts. Like there was some parts where okay, yeah, the guy's wearing the same outfit in season 3 from season 1 because it's the same taping day, but it was
Right.
just like I found myself like finishing those sentences. Like what was the dude, Coke LaRock, who was like the first so-called party MC.
Yeah.
It was just like I knew what he was gonna say because I saw it the first season, but I really liked how in the third season they kind of covered the regionality.
Yeah.
How kind of regionally each city and each scene kind of pushed themselves to the forefront and then were able to leverage all the assets they had in their community, like commercially. And then, hip hop always seems like this city's popping, this city's popping, this region, this coast. So they really captured that.
I enjoyed the series a lot, and I was thinking of it because I'm talking about Crisscross, and I swear we won't talk about Crisscross the whole time. Um, but when they were talking about the Atlanta scene, and I didn't realize that Jermaine Dupri, I knew that he had produced their album. I didn't realize that he was like 18 or 19 when he met them when they were like 11 or 12, and like
Hmm.
that he just met them in a mall, like he just saw them walking around, and they had like
Yeah,
a
they were the it boys, basically.
yeah. And he's like, what do you guys do?" And they're just like, "We just chill. We just hang out." He's like, "All
Yeah,
right,
like we're
I'm
just
gonna do
fly.
something." Yeah, very interesting.
Hmm.
Um, so the other thing I was thinking of with that particular docu-series, because the third season specifically, I think it was the third season where they had like an episode almost completely dedicated to Biggie, and then they had an episode dedicated to Tupac, and of course talking about the, you know, coastal war thing, East Coast, West Coast. Um,
Hmm.
did you have a preference between the two, Biggie or Tupac? I know there's usually people fall into one of the two camps, right?
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, personally, I remember, I was born in 87, so I was still very young when both of them were alive, but I definitely remember the music. So at the time, I wasn't partial. I was just glad that my mom let me listen to rap. Cause like sometimes, with the lyrics, she'd be like, "Oh, if I hear you repeat that, whatever, this or that." But like, I was just glad to like just really be listening to rap. And today, like I'm 32 now. I feel like to me, Biggie and Pac are to me it's like to pick one over the other. It's like I like and connect with them um in different ways. You know what I'm saying? I feel
Right.
like they're both under the umbrella of hip hop, but it's just like what drew me to Biggie is a lot of like his wordplay. Like for example, and it's funny because both of them, they when they talk about so-called, gangster rap and this, that, and the fourth, you get these two guys are very highly cultivated storytellers. Like you got to think Biggie, he's the child of Jamaican immigrants. His mother's an English teacher who, tried her best to shelter him. So his grasp and use of the English language, and me also being Jamaican, so like the way sometimes you would navigate dialect and work the way he can work his way in and out of any type of instrumental, tell a story, his syllables, his bounce, his flow. I mean, linguistically, Biggie to me is a whole thesis. You know what I'm saying? And
Sure.
it would make me think about like when I go to my dad's side of the family, like my mom's American, my mom's African American, and my dad's Jamaican. So it's just like, I could see how his mind would like be like shifting through traffic, changing lanes in language like a Biggie verse. It just like I feel like a scholar when I spit a Biggie verse. You know what I'm saying? And then when I
Yeah.
connect Pac, who's like the son of a Panther who defended herself in court, pregnant with him, and got off. He's seen all these crazy things. He's a trained actor because people forget that he's an art school kid as well. So,
Yeah.
all that he was able to put in his performance, like the passion and the intensity, and like a Pac verse to me is something that's like so bold and epic. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's like Herculean to me, and it's just it's kind of it's different, you know what I'm saying? It's like to me Biggie's like the first time I read Chaucer, and then like Tupac to me is like the first time I read the Odyssey, you know?
Oh
And
wow.
so
That's a great analogy right there.
yeah, I mean, the Canterbury Tales, like, I remember I connected with it because I was like, oh man, Chaucer is dope. I mean, he makes me think of like, of how Biggie was using words and syllables and was coming back and forth and just really just playing with the language and just it was like an insight into his mind if you could sometimes see beyond the subject matter. And I think that's the thing that's crazy because at 32 now, I'm about 6, 7 years older than both of them. Had the privilege of of living to that
Right.
age. So I'm thinking like, wow, with his prowess at such a young age and his flow, what was he going to elevate his wordplay to? What were the stories that he was going to tell? Because I don't really see him staying necessarily in that space. And then with Tupac, who'd always been politically grounded, it was like once maybe he kind of got out of his 20s, started putting himself around, maybe more stable people, like what was he going to finish growing into? Because I mean, yeah, he was definitely rapping was something that he did, but he was a visionary. He was, I don't want to
Yeah.
say a politician, but he was definitely a cultural leader. So, I always, sometimes it's like when I think of Biggie and Pac now that I'm older than they were when they died. It's just like I think about the moves that I've made in my life and how far I've grown since I was 24 and 25 years old, which was the ages they were when they died. It's like, wow, like what could have been, you know?
No, that's a very good point, and that's something that I think when I think of both of them, that's the most frustrating part of thinking about them is that like they were so damn young and like how many more and I only ever thought about it really in terms of music, like how many more classic albums could we have gotten from each of them? But like your point is very well made that like even beyond that, like I think especially with Tupac, like I think he would have gone into politics eventually. I think uh,
Mhm.
there was no doubt about it, and he would have been, a bombastic like ground level moving politician. There's no telling what he was capable of.
Yeah, because he was making moves already, and it was just like at his age, and just the fact of like, his lineage and what he represented in the like, I don't know if you're familiar with the story about, his mom and like Matulu Shakur, Asada Shakur, and like all the things that kind of led up to what happens in his parents generation that kind of led him to be born into his situation. But also I do want to touch on like the East Coast West Coast thing. To me, like, I'm from Ohio, you know what I'm saying, like in the Midwest. So it was like we were in the middle of it, and so I mean I wasn't part. The only thing that I was really partial to in the mid 90s regionally was Bone,
Sure.
like Bone won the Grammy. Like that was a big deal. Like when that happened, everybody was cousins or related to Bone. Even if you never met him, it was like, oh yeah, that was my cousin, my cousin's brothers, boyfriends, hairdressers, brothers, and Bone. And it was cool because Bone, I believe, was like one of the only groups that had collaborated with both Biggie and Pac. So, when Notorious Thugs came out, I mean, that was everybody's jam.
Yeah.
But also Bone Thugs and Harmony were mentored and brought along by Eazy-E, who's from LA. They were on Ruthless Records first. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Cleveland was always kind of in like a weird, middle place with that. So I mean, we didn't really, I mean, the East Coast, West, and maybe I'm speaking from my perspective because there's probably some like 40, 50-year-old hip hop head that was like, no, it was like this. But to me, it was just like, from what I remember, it was a great time in music. I was probably a little too young to understand the full scope of the beef. And then,
Sure.
as a researcher looking back on it, a lot of it seemed like it was just a lot of things that it was a lot of marketing.
Sure.
Like the music couldn't just be good. You had to territorialize and kind of criminalize it and give it this kind of turf war feeling, when it was just like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that the rock acts had to do that. The country acts didn't have to say, we're Georgia, we're Texas, we're Carolina country. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I felt like with a lot of like the upsurge of a lot of like militant, aggressive, hard hitting black music, it couldn't sound unified from coast to coast. And that might be a bit of me talking about some powers that be kind of talk, but I felt like it had to be kind of bifurcated and just broken up into little controllable pieces to make, and kind of made it try to implode on itself. Because then after those two guys got taken out, then we kind of move off the regionalism, and we just kind of start getting towards 2000 and 2001, and just kind of the bling bling era, which was dope for what it was. But then I felt like it just kind of just went everywhere. And then hip hop kind of went through this weird super commercial phase where a lot of everybody had started saying that, hip hop sucks, this, that, and the fourth, which I never ever believed that. But I just felt like the East Coast, West Coast thing really hurt the true growth of the scene. But meanwhile, you have groups like Wu-Tang Clan who are killing it on both coasts, all over the country, and they weren't really regional. They weren't getting caught up in a lot of that nonsense. And then, you've got Bone Thugs and Harmony doing their thing. You've got Outcast. They kind of got overshadowed in a lot of the mess, which was even symbolized at that Source Awards. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
I remember I actually watched that. I didn't understand why they were getting booed. I remember being a kid and I'm like, wait, they won. Why are they booed? They made great music.
Right.
So, so it was just, I don't know. I feel like that was a lot of like parent company marketing kind of BS that just got in the way and interrupted a lot of just good music, and a lot of like bridges that could have been built, and a lot of bonds. Because, and at the core of it, hip hop is still cultural expression. But sometimes when you get the big kind of commercial wheel in there, and it puts a wedge and makes things manageable and sellable and consumable for the masses instead of the group that it was created by and for, it just kind of, part my language, it just fucks everything up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And kind of touching on the commercial influence and the kind of powers that be that are kind of still pulling the strings of um, you know, a lot of music in general. I wanted to get your thoughts on Record Store Day. I don't know if you've looked at the releases for that are scheduled for the Black Friday Record Store Day coming up here in November.
Yeah. Hmm.
Are you excited about anything on that list?
Um, Stillmatic. I definitely say I'm excited about the Stillmatic
Yeah,
reissue,
yeah.
because I had the CD. That was before I really got into the vinyl. Um, what else? What else? Something else. I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me. I'm really excited about the Stillmatic. The JBs are coming out with something, and I love the JBs.
Hmm.
Um, Miles Davis has a few things coming out, like a few unreleased cuts. I'm always interested to see what that's all about. Um, Something else.
What is it
I'm
the
trying.
so DMX has like a
Oh
six
yeah, the
like a
Smoked Out
live.
Fest.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm pumped for that. But one thing I was a little disappointed by is like there was really no reggae on this one. I feel like we just had probably the best record store day in terms of black music, and the selection there was this past April. And I felt that this one was a little, was like a step back. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it took so long for Record Store Day Records not to just be whack and just a reissue of a color
Right.
vinyl of something that you can just get anywhere or some. And I'm not knocking dad rock, but to me, like hip hop, like 90s hip hop is the new dad rock. So I feel like we kind
Yeah.
of have to shift that title. But like, I was just like, as much as I love Bowie, it was just like, all right, there's so many different re-releases of different studio versions or alternate mixes on a color vinyl, and they finally started working things in. They had a nice eclectic mix, and they had a decent reggae representation. um Also this past spring, the one that just happened. But this year, I mean, it's cool, but like I wasn't too excited about it. But one thing, like, whenever the record store days happen, I always make sure I get all the hip hop, reggae, soul, and jazz, and I'll
Sure.
stock it in the store. So everybody knows that, like, if they're not having the smoked out whatever at shop XYZ, I'll definitely probably have that at mine. But yeah,
Yeah.
I say I'm not disappointed to say, but it definitely left a lot more to be desired though this
Yeah,
year.
and that was the feeling I kind of had was, I looked at the list. It's like 178 different like line items on this list. And, after I went through it the first time when it came out like 2 weeks ago, I went back and just tried to, and now I don't recognize every single artist name. So this number that I'm going to throw out is not guaranteed like legitimate number. But I
Hmm.
saw like I was just looking for like trying to count like hip hop related acts. Like eight maybe are on there out of
Are you
178.
including Slipknot?
No, I am not.
Okay, okay, just making sure you're not padding the numbers.
No, 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 no. Eight is the ceiling, and that may have been, like I said, it may actually be closer to like five.
Yeah.
Um, you got the Stillmatic that you mentioned. You've got the DMX. You've got Naughty by Nature's album.
Oh, yeah, the Poverty Paradise. Yeah.
Yeah, which was, I was interested to learn. I didn't realize that that won the first ever Grammy for best rap album.
Yeah, well, the thing is you're not going to be able to pull an archive of it up because they weren't televising the hip hop winners
Oh,
on the
yeah,
Grammys. I don't think for, like, was it either the first 5 years or 10 years? Because like, it's funny, people talk mess about Will Smith being soft and he doesn't rock the boat. But I remember when he's just like, man, they don't respect us. I'm not even showing up to the Grammys to pick up mine. It's like, why? He's like, we're not even gonna be on TV. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying? Like, he was
yeah.
just like, whatever on the Grammys. And then eventually, like, the Grammys, and they're still funny style as it is. But yeah, that was the first hip hop Grammy. I think, because what was it, 95 or 96 when they opened up the category.
Yeah, I think it was 96. Yeah.
Yeah, Grammys, get your shit together. 96? Come on. That was just like, you could tell they just had to give in at that point.
Right, right. But by having it on the non-televised portion, they were still like, establishing their like, okay, we'll give an award, but we're not gonna, fucking really give it its proper due yet.
Yeah, and they're still getting shit on by the mainstream, right? Like, Drake still takes a poop on the Grammys today. He's like, yeah, this is cool, but like, you guys are late. I feel like there's so much weirdness with these, like, awards of these, like, so-called major industry awards. And it's just like, sometimes just to be validated by your following, the fans, the people, the numbers, it's just like, excuse my language, but like, I can't be mad at an artist when they say, man, fuck a Grammy. Like, they're
Yeah,
late.
yeah,
It's like, sometimes it's like when they give out an award, it's like because they have to. It's just like they're just trying to stay relevant at this point,
sure.
but yeah, everybody knows, like, yeah, the Grammys, they're racist, they suck. They're late all the time. It's like, oh, they gave such and such an award. I mean, do you remember, was it 2 years ago, even Adele had to apologize? It was 2 years in a row. Adele had to apologize to Beyonce. She's like, yo, Beyonce, yo, I didn't know they're gonna give me this fucking award. I don't deserve it. My bad. You're the queen.
Right,
Macklemore
right.
was like, the year before, he was like, Kendrick, bro, like, don't hate, like, I don't even want to touch this fucking thing. Like,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
playing games. So it's just like, even when people are afraid to touch the damn thing because they know that it's kind of some, bullshit in the game, it's like, man, Grammys, like I said, get your shit together.
Um, you did talk about this past April's Record Store Day,
Hmm.
some of the hip hop releases um, that they put out. Did you get that Biggie and Craig Mack um, Bad Boy sampler? It was like it was a vinyl, but it also came with the tape cassette.
I don't think I got a copy of it. I think because sometimes I'll keep a copy of something that's left over if I don't manage to snatch one off the top. So I can't even say if I honestly remember if I got that one in. You know what? No, I ordered it and didn't get that one because and get this. So that was also the one where the Bone Thugs and Harmony, East
Yeah, yeah.
99 Eternal, only 8 of those came through to Cleveland. I
Oh my,
didn't get one. Yeah, yeah, no, I didn't get one. I was totally left out. There was like, I think that coffee shop, the one that I said that has like the real dope dollar bin,
yeah,
they got one, and one other spot across town did. But it was just like Cleveland got mad snubbed in those. So there was a lot of them I end up not getting. And sometimes I have an issue with record store days here and there because they have an issue fulfilling their orders. But
yeah.
yeah, I end up there was a lot of records I either got one of or I didn't get one at all. Yeah,
That's crazy that the Bone Thugs reissue for Cleveland was just like nowhere to be found. That's
yeah,
insane.
no, they really screwed the pooch on that one. So.
Um, I was excited because the new Jack City soundtrack was re-released,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I'd almost picked that up like 4 years ago. One of the stores that I shop at, they're one of the ones where they just have the sleeve like out in the bins, and then you bring it up to the front, and they go get the record from the back, right?
Uh huh.
The actual record. So like, and this is what taught me to always look at it before I leave the store because I wasn't checking everyone at that point. So I got home and I took it out of the sleeve, ready to play the new Jack City soundtrack, and it was a Stevie Wonder album. And
Oh.
not to disrespect Stevie Wonder, but I wanted the new Jack City soundtrack.
No, no, you weren't in a Stevie kind of mood. You wanted some
Yeah,
Christopher Martin, or was it Christopher Williams? Yeah.
Christopher Williams, and I wanted to hear Ice T, Nino's theme. I wanted to hear
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Two Live Crew at the end. The Dick is in the dust. Like
Yeah.
that was the mood I was in, and so like to pull a Stevie Wonder album out, not even one of the best ones. I'm like, this you guys screwed me over here. So I was stoked to get that this past April. But yeah, I'm always keeping an eye out for the hip hop releases and the electronic music releases, and that's kind of the frustrating part for me personally with Record Store
I
Day is
definitely
that
say they lack on the electronic side for sure. Like
yeah.
totally. Like I mean, hip hop is pretty meager, but on the electronic side, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm like you're ignoring like the summer of '88 when a couple of Brits brought ecstasy back to England from Ibiza. It's like
Hmm.
there's like 30 years of amazing individual tracks that you could put out on singles. There's albums that came out. You could make compilations. There's all sorts of things you could be doing with this entire huge genre.
But
But
the thing is even with a lot of electronic DJs, whether you're looking at techno, trance, house, all of that, a lot of these people are still vinyl is still a central part of that culture today. So
yeah,
it's you know what I'm saying? Like it's not like I feel like if you, maybe it's me, but there's like some conspiracy to have all of this kind of dusty dad rock just constantly being repurposed that nobody's looking for. And there's a bunch of great electronic release because I don't even care if you're just doing new releases. Like I would be even cool with that. Okay, maybe you didn't get a classic, whatever, but like why can't there at least be some Larry Heard reissues? You know what I'm saying? Like I
right,
want
right.
some Mr. Fingers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You know how much I have to pay just to get like Mysteries of Love and all this. Like it makes no sense that that has not been reissued, at least in some cool various artists compilation, or
sure.
just a lot of those like tracks, records, just like
Yeah.
just OG type of like reissues, and you just don't see them, but it's just like, but here comes Moody Blues on color vinyl, the fifth iteration. And my thing is like, I still have like the Moody Blues from a year or two ago. I tried, and just to stay within the pledge requirements, I can't like super discount it. Well, it wouldn't make sense to super inflate the price because I can't sell it for what it is now. It's like
Right.
nobody wants it. I've taken it to flea markets, I've taken it to record fairs. I mean, it's just like, no, no. I've even tried to like throw it in, a bunch of records. And I was like, yeah, here, I'll even throw this in, no cost. I'm like, oh no, I appreciate it. I'll just take the free crate, but you can keep this Moody Blues record.
You
Like
literally
sometimes
give the
somebody
shit
will,
away.
I can't even give it away. Sometimes people be like, hey, I really just want you to buy the crate. You can keep the records inside. Just buy the crate from me, so I don't have to take it back home. And like, I literally had somebody go through it and they was like, yeah, I'll take this. I really want the crate, but I'll take all the records. But here, you can even keep this Moody Blues. I was like, no, 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 that's all you. And they're like, no, no, it's all you.
That is funny. That is very
So,
funny. It's sad that it's funny. Like I totally feel where you're coming from on this, and I've complained about this on the podcast before. It's just like we who needs an 18th live concert from Grateful Dead that nobody's heard before? Like everybody who's into the Grateful Dead has already scoured the internet and heard all their 6,000 shows. Like they
the
really have.
Deadheads don't even want that stuff. They have it
No,
already.
they had it already. So why are you putting this out? But there it is. It's taking up,
You're better off
slots.
selling like a t-shirt, like a commemorative t-shirt for the Grateful Dead. And then they're like, oh, I don't have that t-shirt, I'll get it. But like the vinyl, they're like, oh, I've bought that one several times over. And it's just like, I don't know. And no disrespect, the Dead, I love the music. Everybody else, still great music, but it's just like, come on. It's just like, maybe I don't know what the larger aggregate numbers of stuff that really sells are, because maybe that it's a reflection of what's selling. But
Sure.
I can't believe that. I can't. I just refuse to believe that, especially because if most of the core, there's two core buyers as far as vinyl goes in the states, and you have like the 45 and up, and then you have, I guess what they're saying, the what is it, like the 18 to 34 age group.
Yeah.
So, and so I mean, it's just like the people who are really out and about, the up and coming, I feel like captive vinyl audience that you do want to capture, the younger people, it's like nobody wants that shit. I'm sorry. It's just like, have some more stuff that like we can identify with, or some more like stuff from maybe the same era, but that might not have gotten the shine, you
Sure.
know?
Sure.
So,
And I'm as I'm looking at the list right now, there's a Madonna track that I look, and Madonna usually has at least one release every
oh, the
year.
Madam X. Yeah.
Oh, this is a I Rise single.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And and it's just remixes. It's six remixes of this song that I've never heard of. And no disrespect to Madge, obviously she's a living legend, an icon. All the accolades go her way, but it's like I don't know. I kind of would rather have some things that have never been pressed before rather than like a 2019 remix of a Madonna single that like again, I haven't even heard of this single. Maybe I'm just out of touch, but
No, no, you're not out of touch. And like us, Madonna's got plenty of bangers. But the thing is Madonna's, I feel like after coming out of the 80s and 90s, after the close of the 90s, personally, I would say the demand for Madonna, I wouldn't say like Madonna hasn't aged as well, like her material and her allure outside of the space that she had at the time hasn't really aged as well. Like she's still a legend. She's still, but nobody's pressed to hear an unreleased Madonna track.
right,
I'm
right, right.
sorry. Like, I mean, Madonna's dope. Madonna's, she's got a lot of great tracks. She's a very highly produced musician, but I would rather find something that, like, say, for example, what her Bedtime Stories project that was produced by Prince. You've got stuff from like Dark Child. You have Nile Rodgers, who basically saved everybody's career in the 80s. It's
Yeah.
just like, give me something with some like insight on like a lot of these people who are highly produced and work with the big names. Give me something with like a color like flip book and some like studio notes and stuff from some of these, not something that like
Sure.
really adds an extra insight. Because to me, like Madonna, I don't really see her story like as an artist, like really fully still flourishing and developing after like the close of the 90s. I don't know if it makes sense, but like I mean like, and if you think of everything she's kind of released like in the 2000s after, it's just been kind of hit or miss, if not just the outright kind of gaff. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, why force Madonna when like Janet Jackson's still out here killing it? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, give me some unreleased Janet tracks. People still want unreleased Michael tracks. Just still, I mean, all the stuff that they're releasing all of this stuff from Prince's catalog, which I know is like against his wishes. But it's just like you're telling me if Prince had an I Rise unreleased remixes, like that wouldn't be sold out in a hot second.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I'm saying? So I mean, like I said, no disrespect to Madonna, but like I feel like nobody's really pressed for like more Madonna. We have she's got a bunch of dope singles that are so ubiquitous. You can find them very highly priced, or you can find them all the way if you're dumpster diving in a 50 cent bin. You know what I'm saying? She's got great
Yeah.
LPs. It's just like, but to me, Madonna's so ubiquitous and everywhere. It's just like it's like nothing. I don't know. There's like nothing like when it comes to digging, which is all about kind of finding like obscure, rare, look what I found. Madonna's everywhere. She's like rock salt,
Yeah.
rock
Yeah.
salt in the wintertime. No disrespect, but it's like she's everywhere. You can just pick one up off the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right that after the '90s ended, I mean that I mean she shouldn't feel bad or any sort of disrespect thrown your way for having almost two full decades of monster hits, like monster tracks. And everybody who's gonna go throw on a Madonna record right now, or who's gonna
Hmm.
like go to a DJ and request a Madonna track, it's gonna be one of those songs that came out in the '80s and early '90s anyway. They're not they're not
Who's
requesting,
requesting music? Like,
you know. Yeah, exactly. And they're not. Well, I kind of like that track, but they're
I
not,
mean, it's tight, but are you requesting it after midnight?
no, 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 exactly.
Right.
No, your point stands. But nobody's requesting the tracks you did with Justin Timberlake from like the early aughts. Like,
Oh yeah.
so it's like just like you had a huge peak period as an artist, like one of the biggest ever. Like just that should be good enough. It should
Yeah,
be
I mean, like my thing is just be graceful, be 60, be like, yo, been there, done that. Like I saw her last thing I heard about her earlier this year is that she got like butt injections and she was dancing on some kind of pole. And it's like
uh
Madonna, what are you doing? It's like, yo, like you're Madonna, like you can actually like put on a Hillary Clinton suit, you know what I'm saying? Go to Panera or just be on like some like yacht somewhere or like hang out with your like adult children and just be 60.
yeah,
I'd really like to see some of these legends like just be 60. Not saying you have to throw it all away, but it's just like, like I'm ready just for like the next Madonna. Like we have like people who are killing it. It's like Madonna, you don't need to compete with other
right,
people who are doing what you did 20, 30 years ago.
right,
You need to show people who were your age today how to gracefully like grow into like an elder position, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And
So,
it's like as a Bulls fan, it's like when Michael Jordan came out of retirement like the second time to play for the Wizards for a couple years.
yeah.
Like everybody who's a Bulls fan kind of just rewrites the history of it and just like ignores that whole like 2 3 years, because it's like you left on the highest possible point you could have left on,
Yep.
and you did nothing but sully your image even just a little bit by coming back and having a couple of throwaway seasons with the Washington team. Like, yeah, you still scored 40 points a couple times, but like, you know you what's
But
wrong
his first
as a great.
breakaway dunk was like a clunker. Everybody remembers that first fast break. And it was just like he even had his tongue out, Space Jam style and everything, and it just bounced off the rim. It was like, damn, MJ, it was like you literally making yourself human. You're taking yourself off of the God pedestal
Right.
and you're like a mere mortal like the rest of us. Like
So,
we
yeah.
overlooked the baseball shit. We were like, all
Yeah.
right, well,
Yeah.
it's cool. He just wanted to live out a child dream and just say he did it. And the
Yeah.
golfing, yeah, he you did that. That's good. But I don't know. It's just sometimes it's just kind of sad. It's like watching that boxer who just won't go and then they end up getting their brains beat up to mush. And then we
Yeah.
could talk about remember when they were up here, but now it's just like they're saying, and I'm not saying like Madonna's over here like a drooling fool, but like it's just like it's kind of like pathetic, and it's not like, I don't know her finances, but I don't think it's like she's got to do it for money, like, she's
Right.
got to get
Right.
the band together for the reunion tour so she can keep her house payments up. But yeah,
Sure.
like, like I said, but nobody's pressed for that unreleased Madonna song. I mean, it's just like, okay, it was probably unreleased for a reason. And if you play it right now, because isn't it like a 45? So if you play it right now, probably at a party, nobody's gonna ask you what that is.
Right.
Like, I just don't see, even as like the vinyl snob, getting any cachet off of just dropping the needle on that in front of people.
Yeah. Um, I did just want to touch on real quick. I saw an article yesterday about the 2020 nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And firstly, they should just rename it to the Music Hall of Fame because, the last couple years, and it's a good thing. I support them bringing in or nominating musicians that are not quote unquote rock and roll,
Mm-hmm.
who are clearly not rock and roll. So just call it the Music Hall of Fame. 'Cause maybe I'm just being anal about it. I just don't like that it's still called that. And then you're having on this year's ballot, you have Whitney Houston, which is obviously,
Mm-hmm.
she's a legend of the game, obviously for music. And
Mm-hmm.
you've got Notorious B.I.G. He made the ballot, so
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, I don't know how many they get in. It looks like there's like 16 nominees. Um, this one confuses me too. It's Rufus featuring Shaka Khan. What does that mean? Like, is it just Rufus with just Shaka Khan? Like, can she not
Well,
get
no,
in
I
on?
mean there was an era where it was Rufus, but then it became Rufus featuring Shaka Khan. So I think like the final iteration of that before she went solo was Rufus featuring Shaka Khan.
So, so if Rufus featuring Shaka Khan gets in, he can't reference or sing any songs if he's doing a medley. He can't do any of his solo Rufus shit then.
That I do not know. That I do not know.
That's the implication I would learn just from looking at it, because it's like, okay, if it's just this era, then don't talk about, it's like pretend that early stuff didn't happen. And Ain't Nobody by Shaka Khan is one of my favorite songs. So
Yeah, I mean, to me, like when it comes to, I think also being a Clevelander, Cleveland likes to hang its hat on being the place where the term rock and roll was coined. So you got to think at the time that, and I can't remember the exact year, that when they made the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, this is before Cleveland's whole like super redevelopment and gentrification and the whole turnaround was going on. Like there was really not much you can hang on to as a Clevelander. So like, hey, got this museum, some Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We say we're the birth of rock, even though that's not true. Just the term was coined here, I guess, by what was it, Alan Freed. But yeah, I mean, so I feel like I don't know. It's like I do a lot of work with the Rock Hall. It's a lot of great people there. I have my own opinions, and of course, it comes through. I mean, like where I come from as a musician, shop owner, black woman in Cleveland, which also has a huge divide, and then how I feel how some of the selection goes on. Like for example, like Whitney Houston's been dead for years now, but how the hell is Whitney Houston even a posthumous inductee? You know what I'm saying? Nina
yeah,
Simone, Rosetta Tharpe, who so-called the mother of rock and roll, got in last year. Nina Simone last year. You know what I'm saying? So to me,
yeah,
it's just like I don't know. I just feel like there's so much of our music that is always overlooked, and we're the foundation for all. of the music that is considered American music in every genre. And it's just like, oh yes, Nina Simone, yes, she's been dead, she had the Netflix thing going, she had, yeah, let's get her in there. But there's no way that Nina Simone, who lived to be, I think, was 70 something and then had been dead for years, and then Rosetta Tharpe, I mean, she should have been the first inductee. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
like to me, like a lot of people I see are taking this kind of corny ass kind of pride out of, like, these posthumous inductees of a lot of these legendary black artists. And it's just like, are you kidding? Like, this is like a backhanded slap in the face. So, and to me, and the term rock and roll, as it seems, is it's a very slippery slope, because you know, it was a word that was used as a euphemism for race music. You know what I'm saying? So, there's rock that we understand to be rock today as a very kind of typified kind of genre, and that has a look to it that we all associated with rock. But originally, rock and roll, which is a term to rocking and rolling, and it's a sexual reference about being in a bed with someone. So it was just like basically all that boom boom music that the Negroes make. But we can't call it race music. We're just going to call it rock and roll before we transition it and package it with white artists. So the fact that, if we were still using euphemisms, the same euphemism, Biggie would be considered rock and rolling, right?
Yeah.
He's got, I mean, his drums, I mean, hip hop is still considered under the umbrella of rock and roll. You've got his subject matter, it's
Yeah.
very rock and roll. So why not Biggie? But then why not Whitney Houston? Why not all these people? And it's just like, as a Clevelander, and I do a lot of events with the Rock Hall. I do a lot of their, like, pre-parties and after parties. And it's just like every year I'm just like kind of whack. Like, to be honest. And I know, like, somebody's gonna probably, if they hear this, it gets back to Cleveland, somebody's gonna call me and say, what the fuck, Britt, you're throwing us under the bus. But it's just like, at a certain point, it's just like I gotta speak on it. Like, I mean, I understand Biggie, you know what I'm saying, because he was gone before his time. But I feel like maybe you should have inducted Biggie when you opened up the hip hop exhibit, which was almost 20 years ago on the top floor of the Rock Hall. It's good enough to open up an exhibit. So, hey, let Biggie and Pac in, yeah, at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just feel like stuff gets really, it's just, I don't know. I just really don't like the way that they do black artists in the Rock Hall. I really don't like when they choose to give someone their due. And it just, to me, like the Grammys, they look very late in a lot of things.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I I'm sitting back here kind of I just learned a lot of things right now. To be honest, I didn't know who Rosetta Tharpe was. So now
yeah, if you look up Sister Rosetta Tharpe, she's or they'll call her a rhythm and blues musician. She played the guitar, and her style of play is because a lot of people say Chuck Berry, and he's definitely one of the godfathers. But Rosetta Tharpe was before him, and her style had laid the format for what we now know as rock and roll. So her last name is Tharpe. And I mean, of course, you got to do some digging to find stuff on her. But like, now that it's becoming more and more well known, you can easily find a lot of her material. But she got inducted. Uh, was it this past April with her and Nina? So it was either this past April or the one before. But it's always been known, though, that she's the mother of rock and roll. And if you're the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and you call yourself this, you should be on the vanguard of educating and making this known to people. You know what I'm saying? It shouldn't be
Yeah.
something that you just come up on in a conversation with me. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, to me, it's almost like, what the hell took you guys so long? you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that history never changed. And, I mean, if you're giving out the posthumous ones, why not give it to the woman who started it all when you guys opened up? just to really put yourself on the right footing. So, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like as long as sometimes we get snubbed out of history and black people keep getting moved to the margins, where I feel like music historically in it, and I feel a certain way as a black American. Yes, my father's family comes from Jamaica, but my mom's family has been here since here has been here in America. And it's like, you fight in every war, you impact music, you basically create the bedrock of American culture, and you continue to cultivate it along the way and are a huge part of what makes America special. And you're getting snubbed left and right and getting told that you don't have a right to be in this space. Or if you do business with us, we keep all the money. You get shit on and extracted. And it's just like, enough is enough. And I mean, it's like music to me, I feel, especially as a Jamaican, and especially seeing how Jamaicans impact music all over the world. And as an African American, this has been in so many places where we've been disenfranchised. Music has been our lifeblood. It's been our cry. Like, people took the drum from us in slavery so we couldn't communicate. So we still beat on other things. They took instruments from us out of our school programs. So we took home appliances and changed the world. We took turntables and turned them into instruments. And that's the bedrock for so much culture, not even regionally, but all over the world. And constantly people want to tell us what we're doing isn't art while they copy it, steal it, repurpose it, repackage it. They don't want to recognize, they want to continue to exploit, denigrate, and obscure what we do, all the while profiting off of it. And it's just like a huge part of what I do at the shop, my music and my advocacy, is to bring attention to that. Maybe if I were a doctor or a chef, I do my advocacy through medicine or hospitality, but like, music is, I definitely say, the legacy of black people in the Americas. Not just unique to the United States, but definitely, since we are the home of the entertainment industry, but you see it in the Caribbean, you see it in Latin America, you see it in South America, and it's just like the same story over and over. And I feel like, music to us is more than music. It's our voice. Like I said, it's our culture, it's our heartbeat, it's our lifeblood. And I do get very worked up when I talk about it, because it's almost like somebody who has to defend their religion. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody who has to defend their family heritage and their family's future legacy. You know what I'm saying? So wherever you see like black people, and you live in Chicago, so you definitely know. Wherever you see us, you're gonna see music, and you're always gonna know you're on the point of some cultural innovation that's about to happen next, because that's what we do, you know. So yeah, and then so it's like, I'm here, right here, down the street from the Rock Hall. Much props to them. But like, I do call them out when they get it wrong. It's a big weight to carry, to say that you're kind of going to be a gatekeeping institution to say who gets honored and who doesn't in the realm of music. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not going to do it right, I'm going to call you on it on every step of the way, even if it costs me a couple dollars, or I don't get invited to this event or this showcase or this opening. I mean, because at the end of the day, like, that's my people you're talking about, or that you're trying to shade out of recognition or obscure. You want to choose when somebody gets their historical due. And, we're not having that.
Yeah. Yeah. Brittany, I love everything you just said. I'm sitting here with goosebumps. Like, this is this was I'm very grateful that I had this conversation with you. So
Yeah,
thank
likewise. I'm excited to come and check out the record fair in Chicago. Like, it was definitely a cool excuse for me to get out to Chicago, as if I ever really need one. And so hopefully I could sell some records, empty out a couple of those boys, and go digging on the couple of days after, before I come back home to Cleveland.
Are you driving out?
Oh yeah, because it's only like a 5-hour drive. So
Nice, nice.
yeah,
Um, are you gonna be bring that Tribe Called Quest scenario single? Make sure you got a copy of that.
yeah, no problem. I'll make sure I set one aside, because I made sure I ordered a couple dozen of them. Because the first time I pre-ordered them, but I was too late with my order. So by the time I was ready to get them from my sales rep, they were already on back order. So I'll set one aside for you for sure.
I appreciate it.
Unless you want doubles, you know what I'm saying? I know you say you like to DJ. You might want to do some juggling.
You know, you got to have the 2 copies of the really good wax.
Yeah,
Uh,
and Mr. Bongo makes it. Shout out to them, but they'll decide that, hey, you know what? We're not gonna repress this again for like 10 more years.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, if you put a copy aside, I would definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
But thank you so much, Brittany, for joining me on the talk tonight. Again, your website, brittany'srecordshop.com, is amazing. I love the like the rewards program, right? Where you can get like points, um,
Yeah.
towards future purchases and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, I was a little upset because the I was looking at the birthday one, and this was on, I think, like Thursday or Friday, last Thursday or Friday when I ordered it. I was like, "Oh, my birthday's on Sunday," and it's like it's got it's got to be a
Hey, well,
month away.
look,
And I'm
don't
like,
worry. I'll hook you up. I'll hook you up when I get to Chicago. So
oh well, you don't. That's not why I brought it up. I mean, maybe it kind
yeah,
of was,
yeah, yeah.
but I was just sitting there like, wait, oh, a month. Oh, I'm gonna wait a year then. Okay, but anyways, it's a great website. You've got a great store. I hope I get to see it someday, and I can't wait for you to join us at Bin Chickens on November 10th. It's going to be great. I'm definitely going to be digging in your crates for a minute, so can't wait to see you.
All right, likewise.
Well, have a good night. Thank you.
All right, you do the same. Peace.
Bye.